Coming up on Backchecking the Bolts, the Tampa Bay Lightning season comes to an end, but what really decided the first round battle with Montreal? Joining us is Jared Book from Habs Eyes on the Prize to break down how Montreal won the series and where Tampa fell short. Then things heat up in Crossfire. Jared Book and Raw Charge's Justin Godfrey go head-to-head, debating the biggest turning points, coaching decisions, and defining moments from the Lightning and Canadiens playoff series. And finally, what comes next for Montreal? Jared gives us his scouting reports on the Canadiens' second-round showdown with Buffalo and whether this playoff run is just getting started. This is Backchecking the Bolts, and it starts now.
Welcome to Backchecking the Bolts. Backchecking the Bolts is your cup of coffee to get you the latest on the Tampa Bay Lightning. Join host Jason Linkus and the managing editor of Raw Charge, Justin Godfrey, as they break down the Lightning's most recent games and go beyond the highlights, telling you what the box scores didn't. It's time to drop the puck.
Welcome to Backchecking the Bolts. Hi, I'm Jason Linkus. As always, I am joined by my cohort, Justin Godfrey. You can read him each and every day at www.rawcharge.com. And for the second time, and to wrap up the Montreal-Tampa series, we're joined by Jared Book from Habs Eyes on the Prize. He's going to give us the latest and greatest on the Montreal Canadiens as they look forward to the series against Buffalo. But this episode is going to be the recap episode. We are going to go and take a look back at that Montreal-Tampa 7-game series. What did we like? What didn't we like? What were the turning points? We're going to have Justin and Jarrett iron it out, and we're going to break this series down. But first of all, let's welcome Jared Book in. Jarrett, we just watched game one of the Montreal-Buffalo series. Montreal losing by a score of 4-2. What were your initial thoughts?
I knew there was going to be an adjustment because I'm sure we'll get to it, but Tampa Bay and Montreal was not playoff speed. Like it was intense, like a playoff series. It was not fast, and I think Montreal really struggled early on to get used to that pace. And I think game one was always going to be hard for them, but it's a 7-game series for a reason. So they have time to recover. But yeah, I mean, it's completely different styles of play, and I think that there is an adjustment there for sure to be had.
Previously, Buffalo 0 for their last 22 on the power play to end the regular season, 1 for 24 against Boston. They went 2 for 3 last night. Was there something out there that Buffalo did that surprised Montreal, or was it just better execution?
I think it was execution. I think also most of the goals they were just weird bounces. The first power play goal in particular was, a rebound that landed perfectly where it needed to. Little things like that. Buffalo also had a lot more time to prepare than Montreal did for game one. Not that's an excuse; it's just a reality. And special teams is where that shows up more than anything else. It's a lot easier to be at home, watch game 7 and figure out who you're going to play then than win game 7 and then have to prepare for Buffalo afterwards. So it's a quick turnaround, but I'm not too worried. The penalty kill from Montreal has been pretty good all season. It was good in the Tampa series more often than not. And I think just the speed really is something that they needed to catch up on, and I think that caused a lot of the penalties as well. But even the first penalty was just a bad bounce, like stick in the wrong place, and it just trips a guy, and that happened a couple of times. Just things like that, but not too worried. That's why it's a series.
Jared, what did Montreal do after they won in Tampa? Did they go right to Buffalo? Did they go back home? What did they do?
No, when Martin St. Louis said we're not leaving, he meant it literally. They stayed in Tampa a couple of days. I think they had one day of just off day, and then they had a practice actually in Tampa before leaving for Buffalo earlier this week, maybe Tuesday even. So yeah, that's what they did. They stayed in Tampa a couple extra nights and then made their way to Buffalo. And the original plan, I think, was to go straight to Buffalo, but I think just the way Game 7 went, they realized that better just to stay a little bit and take their time.
For those watching the Montreal Buffalo series, what are two things that you think that the fans need to look for to determine who's going to win this series?
I think one of the big things is just to look at, it sounds cliche, but which goaltender is better? Um, I think the two goaltenders that don't really have a lot of playoff history, Dobish and Lyon. I mean, they're having playoff for this year. Alex Lyon's biggest, playoff moment was getting pulled for Bobrovsky on the way to the Panthers' first cup, right? Like,
You're right.
and Dobish obviously is, in his second, first full playoff run as a starter. So I think that's something that's going to be interesting. I think that in the first game, especially, Dobish couldn't see most of the goals that went in. And I think a lot of that was just Montreal trying to, react quickly and getting in the wrong spots, and lots of errors of execution, things like that. So I think that's one thing. I think the other thing is just to see how Montreal comes out in game two. I think that's going to be the most telling thing in this series. Game one, you can kind of flush it, put it down to a bunch of different things. Not that they're excuses, but they're just realities. If they don't come out stronger in game two, then, it could be a really short series.
Give us your prediction.
I said before game one, Montreal in 6, and I feel like I'd be cheating if I change it after game one. Obviously, in 6 games is going to be a little bit tougher, just math-wise, losing game one. But I mean, if they win game two, it comes out to about the same thing. I don't think anybody would have expected them to sweep. I don't think anybody would have expected them to sweep the first 2 games in Buffalo. So I'm going to stick with Montreal in 6. But like in the Tampa series, if it goes 7, I will not be shocked at all. 2 very evenly matched teams. They had the same number of goals in the season series. It was tied, very similar to Montreal and Tampa going into that series as well. So it wouldn't surprise me if it goes 7. I just don't see Montreal losing game 6 at home a second time. Whether that's to stay alive or whether that's to win the series, that's to be determined if it gets there. But that's where I'm going in Montreal in 6.
Justin, I had Buffalo in 6. Did you have Montreal?
I think I jumped on the Montreal bandwagon, if I remember. Who knows? I was in a fog for that entire podcast. No, like Jared said, I think it's kind of it's an even match, a lot faster for sure. But I think you got 2 teams that haven't been here in quite a while, so winning the first round's nice. Hey, we won the first round. Now it's kind of getting real, if you will. So the competition stepped up. Now real playoff, because you win, you're in the conference final, and then you're just one step away. So I think it's going to be a really good series. It's going to be interesting to see how the goaltenders match up. I think if at the beginning of the season you would say that Buffalo would have Alex Lyon and Montreal would have Jakub Dobish as your playoff goaltenders, both franchises would be kind of stunned. But it should make for a lot for
Yeah, I think both fan bases would be shocked they'd be in the playoffs.
In the playoffs, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
never mind in round 2. If you told them those would be the starting goalies.
So.
A fun fact of this series: the last time Montreal beat Buffalo in the playoffs, Jarrett, was, remember the year?
93.
And that was the last time the Canadiens paraded with the Stanley Cup. For Buffalo, they have not been to the second round of the NHL playoffs since 2007. And that year they lost to the Ottawa Senators in the conference finals. Guys, let's recap the Montreal-Tampa series. We're going to have this a crossfire segment. Jarrett, since you did the majority of the talking earlier, I'm going to start with Justin. Justin, what was the one thing that surprised you in this series?
I think it would probably have to be the play of Dobish. I thought that was one area that the Lightning could probably exploit, a young netminder without a lot of NHL playoff experience, and he came through. I think we talked about it a little bit last podcast. He wasn't necessarily overwhelmingly spectacular, but he made the saves he had to make, and that's with the way they were playing in front of him. Make that first save, let his defenders clear out any rebound chances, any second chance opportunities. That's all he had to do. And I thought, especially in the couple of times when the Lightning really pressured him, he made the saves he had to make. If you look back, I think really the only probably 2 soft goals he gave up were the ones in Game 5 off the rush, maybe the one Hagel goal as well from the boards, but he was solid, especially in Game 7 when they needed him, and I think that proved to be the difference. Thought Vasilevsky played outstanding. I thought Vasilevsky played good enough to win, but Dobish was just a little bit better.
Jarrett?
I think the thing that surprised me is just how good Tampa Bay was in shutting down Montreal's top players. I joked about it when the nominations came out yesterday, that if the voting was after the playoffs, Anthony Cirelli would have a much better chance of winning the Selke than he did after the regular season. I just think that was uh, a really big part of the series. I think that, and what intrigued me is that the matchups were really pretty even the entire series. Like nothing really changed much in terms of line matching and things like that. There were a couple little tweaks here and there, but it was pretty much just going at it. It was not really much a tactical adjustments as much as it was little things like that. But yeah, I mean, if you would have told me that Montreal would win the series with practically no 5-on-5 production from that top line, I probably wouldn't have believed you. And so that probably surprised me is just the fact that it went 7 despite Montreal's top line not doing very much at even strength.
Jared, I'll start with you with this question. Who on your team was the biggest surprise, and who on your team was the biggest disappointment in the series?
Biggest surprise, I think. I said it before the series. Kirby Dach. I mean, he came up big in big spots. Obviously, the mistake in Game 2 was a big storyline. The reaction from the fan base was not very good for a portion of the fan base. Let's be real here. Was not very good, but came out strong Game 3. That line really set the tone in Game 3, and got some big goals in Game 5, and just. He's had a better. He scored a big goal in Game 1 of the Buffalo series, yeah, as well. It's just, I think that he's just. We didn't see this Kirby Dach in the regular season, so I kind of expected him to take a step up. But the fact that he did, I think was pretty surprising. Biggest disappointment for me is easy. It's Cole Caulfield. Not that he played badly, but he wasn't Cole Caulfield, and he wasn't Cole Caulfield in Game 1 of the Buffalo series. I think he's in his head a little bit. He's scared to shoot. And I think that that's not a place you want to be. I think he just shoot more the way he is right now. Yeah, I think that was the biggest disappointment. Not that he played badly, but I think you expect a 51 goal scorer to score more than one goal in a 7-game series. I don't think that's too much to ask. But his all around game is better, and that's why he's not hurting the team, but definitely not contributing as much as people would expect.
Justin, biggest surprise, biggest disappointment for the Bolts?
Yeah, I think you're going. I mean, Dominic James, probably your biggest surprise. He looked like the most engaged player out there. He played with speed. We mentioned, Jared mentioned earlier the pace that the series was at, and James was one of those few Lightning forwards that actually played with a little bit of pace. It was effective. I thought his line was probably the best line, especially over I'd say the last 3 games or so for the Lightning. So it bodes well for the Lightning, I guess. You got a nice young forward there, a nice young center that plays with a lot of pace. Attacked the net. He drove to the net, which a lot of the Lightning forwards did. They love that little get into the zone, then curl back. James just went straight to the net a few times, and it created some chances with him and Gage Gonsalves on that line. So yeah, I guess I'm going to put him down as my biggest surprise. Hopefully he can carry that over. So. And then biggest disappointment, I hate to keep piling on the guy, but I think when you're the best player in the league, Nikita Kucherov, you got to find a way to score more than, a goal. I thought he played kind of Kucherov-esque. There were some times he looked dangerous out there, but for the most part, Montreal shut him down. He ended up with 6 points, 7 games, which is fine for most players. But again, when you're, a Hart candidate, when you're a Lindsay candidate, you got to be better. You just got to find a way to adjust your game. I don't think he made too many adjustments. I think he got frustrated early in a lot of games, and Lightning fans have seen that throughout his career. If you can frustrate him early, a lot of times you can take him out of his game, and he starts trying some riskier passes. He had a bunch of, he's always going to have turnovers, yes, but I thought he had more than his fair share, especially in Game 7. I don't think he had a very good Game 7 at all. So that's kind of the biggest disappointment. And then you couple that with Brady Point not getting anything done either. So those top 2 players not being able to find the back of the net really hurt the Lightning in this series.
In a series where there's a slew of overtime games, every game was a 1-goal game. I'm going to ask you both a question, and I don't know if there's a right answer or a wrong answer, but what was the turning point in this series? Jared, I'm going to start with you. What was the turning point for both teams? Because this series, you had Game 2, where you mentioned Kirby Dach made a defensive lapse. JJ Mosier scores. The series is tied at 1. It's a whole new series than if Montreal goes up 2-0 in the series. You had the Max Crozier hit on Slafkovsky, which Justin and I said, is it a game-changing hit or is it a series-changing hit? Jared, what was the turning point for you in this series?
Yeah, I think there's two different ones for both teams, I think. Honestly, I think for Tampa, the turning point was probably not coming out away with Game 5. I think that gave Montreal a little bit of momentum, especially after the way Game 4 went. You mentioned the Slavkovsky hit. And Marty St. Louis said, it's only a series defining if you make it one. And, the fact that they came out in Game 5, came back from a couple of softer goals on Dobish and pulled that out. For Montreal, I think the turning point of the series was literally how they came out in the third period of Game 7. After that second period, it could have gone two ways. They could have been woe is us and continued down that path of not doing anything, or play a very solid third period. And they played a very solid third period. They didn't get necessarily the shots on goal necessarily that you would but the NHL is counting them differently, and they got attempts at the net. That's what he is. But I think 8 shots in that third period is exceptional for the situation they were in. I mean, Tampa Bay was fighting for their life for the last 8 minutes, 7.5 minutes of that game, and they only got in Game 5. They got 10 in the last 3 minutes. So getting 8 in the third period when you're defending a lead for 8.5 minutes. I think that third period was a turning point for Montreal because it really could have gone either way. They could have let that second period affect them, or they could have come out stronger in the third, and they did.
Justin?
Yeah, definitely agree. Game 5 for me was the turning point in the entire series for both teams. Lightning win that one. They just came out so flat. Even if they played a better first period and still lost, I just thought they just played so bad in that game. It's so frustrating, honestly. That gave Montreal, like Jared said, the confidence that, hey, yeah, we're coming off this Game 4 loss, but we came back, we beat the Lightning in their house. Basically gave Montreal 2 chances to win the series, and they were able to do it on the second one. Also thought the first game, I know I mentioned this on the last podcast, I thought the way Montreal played in the first game, they didn't get rattled by the Lightning trying to, push the physical edge in that game. They won that game. The power play came through, put a lot of doubt in the Lightning mind, I think. And then they were playing with house money. You figure for the next two games, you win the one on the road. So what if you lose Game 2? You're still going back even. Now you can focus on Game 3 and Game 4. So yeah, I thought those are 2 turning points. Definitely, I don't know, man. Just the Lightning not being able to get it done when they needed to. We watched them come back all year long, either trailing or tied in the third period. They found a way to win a lot of games, and they just couldn't do it in this postseason, especially Game 7. You have a performance where you limit a team to under 10 shots, and Jared's right. It was kind of a conservative shot counter in the building that night. I thought they had a few more maybe on net. But still, even if it's 15 shots, in a Game 7, you hold somebody under 20 shots, for God's sakes. You have a great defensive performance, and they just couldn't capitalize offensively on it. So, a lot of stuff for the Lightning to learn in this series, move forward. It sounds like they're bringing the whole team back, so it'll be interesting to see how it goes from here.
Well, half the team has no movement clauses, so they're forced to a little bit. But let's talk about the coaching. Martin St. Louis does not have a ton of playoff experience as a head coach, has a lot as a player. John Cooper, multiple Stanley Cups under his belt. Who won the battle behind the bench? Justin, let's start with you.
I guess you got to give it to the guy who won the series, Marty St. Louis. You tinkered with that third line a little bit. I think that helped up. And even though they didn't score when he moved Slafkovsky off of that top line, it did give the Lightning a little bit more to think about defensively for the last couple of games. So that kind of helped out. I think Cooper did well with the hand he was played. Not having Holmberg for the start of that series, I think really shook them up more than he thought about, because that Gergensen scored Holmberg line was his go-to line. That was his security blanket when things were going bad. When they'd given up a goal, that was the line he threw out there. And I think it took him a couple games to figure out how to deal with that. When he finally put the James Gonsalves line together, I think that helped out a little bit, because the Sorelli line was busy dealing with the top guys, and you kind of needed that security blanket that could match up against the bottom six. And did he ever find it? Not really. So I'll give the edge to Marty in this one. I thought he had a really good series. We talked about it after game one, that timeout he took, a minute into overtime. I thought that was a really great move that he made to help keep the pressure on. So little things like that, I'll give him the slight edge in the series.
Jarrett, your thoughts?
Yeah, I think from a tactical perspective, Cooper had the series played the way he wanted it to be played. And I think Montreal adjusted to that and played well, obviously, and they were able to deal with that. Let's be honest, that was not the pace Montreal would have wanted to play at for the entire series. And I think Cooper did a good job of making that the style of play in the series. I do think that from an outsider's perspective, there was a little bit of I don't know how to say panic, but he played like he didn't have the best team in the series. Like he played like an underdog would have, whether it was putting in Sabrin or little things that he did throughout the series. I think it was a pretty even coaching matchup, and I think that that's a testament to St. Louis, and I think that kind of gives Montreal the edge a little bit, because a lot of people would have expected Cooper to have the edge in that series, and Martin St. Louis went toe to toe with him from a coaching perspective, and I think that says a lot about him and his growth as a coach in this series, and the fact that it's even a discussion of which coach was better is a testament to St. Louis, because I think you're not going to find anybody who thinks that John Cooper is a bad coach or didn't do a good job. I mean, there's probably Canadian fans who are annoyed about the tactics a little bit.
Talk to Lightning fans over the last week, my friend.
Yeah, I've seen that too. But I think that it's it was a good coaching matchup, and I think St. Louis got a little bit of the edge. But from a tactical perspective, I mean, the series was played the way John Cooper wanted it to be played. So I think from if you look at it that way, he did a pretty good job too.
There were a couple veterans in the press box at the beginning of the series that made an impact in this series. Well, for Montreal, they did. For Tampa, he never saw the ice. Brendan Gallagher enters the lineup in Game 5. What did he bring to the Canadiens lineup that they were lacking in the first four?
I think just Brendan Gallagher played his entire career bringing people into the fight. You think about Game 4, they had a 2-goal lead. Slavkovsky get hit really hard. They lose all sorts of momentum late in that game. And Game 5, he just brings a fresher outlook, right? He wasn't part of that Game 4. Well, what does he have to be down about? Then he goes and scores the first goal in Game 5, and I think that's just who he is. He's at a point in his career now where he probably can't play every day in the playoffs and keep up the pace in today's game, which is fine. But that's what he can bring. He can bring that energy. He can bring that kind of let's go, guys. Like, even if he's not playing, he still brings that. But I think that him in the lineup was a little bit of a it kind of personified what he brings. It's not just off the ice, it was on the ice as well. And him scoring that first goal in Game 5 was just telling of what he can bring to this team.
Justin Victor Hedman was in the press box for Tampa. He was working out, trying to get back into the lineup. I know he was on his own timetable. If Tampa has a healthy Victor Hedman, do they win this series?
It's hard to say. I mean, the defense wasn't their problem. Like, the blue line wasn't the Lightning's problem. I think getting Stu back was actually more of a help to them, because he's more of a puck carrier than Hedman is now to his career. Does he bring a little bit more of that stable leadership? I've been here, I've been through these wars before, kind of presence to the team, probably, but they had that in spades, honestly. I mean, you still had the core of those Stanley Cup teams sitting there. So it's not like they lacked for leadership on the ice. Is it a different series? Possibly. It was such a series defined by such slim margins. Maybe having, a former, Norris Trophy winning gold, defender in there does make the difference. But I think the Stu coming back was a bigger help. But it's interesting, that Jared talked about Gallagher. And I think St. Louis realizing that the pace of this series wasn't, breakneck speed, made it perfect for bringing somebody like Gallagher in. He could handle the pace that they were played at. And this guy's been tormenting the Lightning in the playoffs since 2014, for God's sake. So, it's been over a decade that man's been scoring big goals against them. So yeah, it's, that was a really nice move. And like Jared spoke to, I think it did, boost them a little bit. You bring in the guy that's been through it before and helps that bottom six, which proved to be the difference in this matchup, I think, because the top two lines and their lack of production kind of canceled each other out a little bit. So, they got the play out of the Tessier line, and then Gallagher scored that big goal in game 5. So I don't think the Lightning had anybody like that in the press box that they could bring in. They tried Connor Geekie a couple times. They tried, Sabrin when they were trying to be the big bullies in the series, and it didn't work out for them. When they did get down to playing actual hockey and trying their best to play with speed, they played a little bit better. But I don't think Hedman really made a difference. It sounded like he probably could have gone for game 7, but I don't think Cooper wanted to really upset the way they had played in game 6, so, definitely if they'd made it to round 2, it sounds like he would have been playing. He was pretty close. He mentioned that in his exit interview that he felt really good. He's back where he needed to be in his mental headspace. So he was looking forward to getting into the game, but I think the timing just didn't quite work out for him to come back in the series.
To conclude our Crossfire segment, I have a question here. It's a little bit of a loaded question for each fan base. Is Montreal ahead of schedule a little bit and ready to contend for Stanley Cups, or is Tampa an aged contender? Justin?
Montreal's here. I think they're on schedule. You can say they're ahead of schedule, but you got to take the opportunities when they present themselves. So I think they're right where they need to be. As far as Tampa, it's hard to say. Can they win with the style that they play? Yes, they have enough talent to do it. But is it a style that's sustainable in today's NHL? That's the big question. They went out, they made all the changes that they made to compete with the Florida Panthers of the world, even like the Colorado Avalanche and the Vegas Golden Knights. That's the style of play they wanted. The big physical guys kind of grind these games out. If you watch like the Lightning offense, it's get the puck in, work it behind the boards, work it back behind the boards, get it to the point, get a shot off, get the rebound, try it again. It's not fly into the zone, 2 passes and a shot on goal, which I think is a way kind of NHL's evolving right now. So it's going to be interesting to see how they do moving forward. Brisebois talked about he liked the way his team played, and he did get 106 points playing this way. So it's not like they struggle to make it into the playoffs and they're fading. They're not getting any younger, that's for sure. So we'll see. I think maybe they get one more year with this core, and then the big questions have to be asked, especially with Kucherov being a free agent next year. So I think Montreal is right where they need to be, and Tampa is teetering on the brink right now. I don't think they're quite out of it, but they're getting close to the edge.
Jarrett?
Yeah, I don't think, ahead of schedule. If they make like the final this year, then yeah, that's probably ahead of schedule. I think that last year they were maybe more ahead of schedule. I think this year is the year that everyone expected them to be a playoff team, and obviously because of last year, again, there's still holes on the roster. But if you look at the East, Buffalo is going to be a tough series. They swept, they swept the season series, I think, against Carolina, or at least played very well against them, especially down the stretch, with a couple of big wins against them. So if that's the matchup you're looking at, then they can get back to the final if they play their game. That would be, like I said, ahead of schedule. But this is always going to be a tough series for both teams. I think in a more regular playoff format, both would probably be into round 2, or at least expect to be into round 2. And so obviously one team had to be eliminated. But yeah, I think that there is a changing of the guard. But next year, Florida's probably going to be back in the mix. I don't necessarily think Toronto's going to be in there, but Ottawa's going to be there. Detroit's going to be battling again. So it's going to be another year where the teams that don't make the playoffs in the Atlantic are going to be very disappointed they don't make the playoffs in the Atlantic. So it's going to be a little bit interesting. But I think Montreal has established themselves. They've been there now playing in the playoffs 2 years in a row. Kent Hughes still has some things up his sleeve to improve the holes in this lineup even more. He had Noah Dobson last offseason. This season, you're probably going to look at a top 6 forward if I had to guess. So I think that their core is locked in. Like, they're not going anywhere. Whether I don't think this is ahead of schedule. I think they're right on schedule. But depending on how many more steps they take this year, that'll obviously change that. But I think getting through round 1 is a success for them, regardless of what happens in Buffalo. Obviously they get swept probably wouldn't be ideal. But getting to round two is a good spot to be where they are. They got that game 7 experience, and move forward from there.
Final question for the both of you. First for Jarrett. If Montreal is able to get past Buffalo, how do they match up against Carolina, assuming that it's Carolina who has a 2-0 lead against Philly?
Yeah, I think they match up pretty well. Carolina's not a bad team by any stretch, obviously. But it's one of those things where, down the stretch, they had played them twice and they beat them twice. And I think that's a matchup that I think can go well for them in certain ways. Like Carolina gets a lot of traffic on net, but you saw what Dobish can do. Like he's not going to let in a lot of soft goals necessarily. So I don't think the shot volume really affects them. And if Montreal gets through Buffalo, that means that they adjust to the speed. They're back to playing up tempo hockey like they can. And I think that means that matches up well against Carolina. I think that they can do that. You saw what Ottawa did to them. Ottawa played well and just couldn't get goals, and they got good goaltending. I think Montreal can be at their best a better version of that. They obviously have more finishers than Ottawa does. So I think that they match up pretty well against Carolina and Philadelphia, to be honest, if that's what they do. But obviously you have to get through Buffalo first, but I don't think it's that out of the question for them.
Justin, the Lightning have a slew of players with no movement clauses. Tell me one off-season change you could see the Lightning making.
All no movement clauses are is just an extra conversation with the player, right? I don't think they're the end all be all that fans sometimes make them out to be. We've seen plenty of those waived for moves. Again, I'm kind of just looking at maybe somewhere in that Nick Paul category. I think he's a very good player. He had an off year with injuries and stuff. I think he can offer another franchise that steadiness in the center. And with the way Dominic James played this year, you kind of have that, ready to go middle of the lineup kind of center that can play offense and defense as well. So if the Lightning do need to free up that cap space, I could see Nick Paul going somewhere. Their big question, I think their whole summer revolves around what do you do with Darren Radish? Do you give him the big money contract that he's probably going to get from somebody, right? You look at that free agent class, it's not great. Thanks to everybody signing their contracts already. So, they've talked with him over the second half of the season, or at least with his representation. So they're trying to come up with a plan to keep him around without eating up all of their cap. I think they have, I was just looking at it this morning, it's like 13 million or something with the cap going up. So they have some room to sign some people, but I don't think they make a lot of changes. If they do, I think you're going to see some guys internally, like maybe you give Connor Geeky a third line wing and say, hey, you're going to play with us all year long. You can make mistakes and we're not going to kick you out of the lineup. And kind of same thing with Jakob Pelletier. So we'll see how it all goes. I know fans are going to want him to blow it up and start all over, but that's probably not a reality in today's NHL. So if anybody goes, my money's on Nick Paul.
Jarrett, tell everyone about Habs Eyes on the Prize.
Yeah, I mean, it's covers the Canadiens, covers the Rocket, the PWHL as well. All 3 teams are in the playoffs right now, as we speak. Anyway,
yeah, you're a busy camper right now.
There's no break either. The series are scattered too, and there's no rest. It's playoff hockey after playoff hockey. There was a triple overtime PWHL game like 2 days ago, and they play again today. Yeah. And there was game 1. It's a lot of hockey. But yeah, we're covering all of it. Following the Buffalo series, following the Rocket, they have a game 5 on Saturday, and the Victor have a very key back-to-back in their best of 5 series starting on Thursday night tonight. So it'll be interesting, but yeah, we got it all covered, and off season coming up, draft stuff coming up, all that good stuff. Hoping to delay it a little bit longer, but for now, but yeah, just if you want to know what's going on from a Montreal perspective, that's the place to go.
It's not fair. You get to cover playoffs and the first round draft pick. I mean, what's that like, man? It's
For
we
now,
haven't done
for
that in the
now,
Lightning
for
for all
now.
charge forever. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, last year they had 2 back-to-back picks and they didn't end up using them.
yeah,
So,
exactly. Yeah,
it's I think there's a lot of fans that would actually rather them not have the pick because that means something
yeah,
interesting happened. But
exactly. Yeah,
yeah, at least they have them for now.
right.
That'll be interesting.
Justin, tell everyone what's going on over at Raw Charge.
Pretty much the same, except without all that playoff stuff. We'll start talking about we're working on the exit interviews right now. Lightning dropped those yesterday, so we're kind of working our way through them. We talked about Victor Hedman and his reason for not being with the team yesterday. Got some stuff on Anthony Cirelli that we're working on. This the Selke nomination. We'll talk about his season and what his future looks like with the team. But so that's kind of it. The Lightning do have a decent second round pick, so they could actually bring some talent in if Brisebois decides to hold on to it, which is never a given with him. But yeah, we'll keep things going through this early start to the summer, but everything will be at rawcharge.com.
Hey guys, thanks for joining us. Really appreciate the insight on the Montreal and the Tampa series. You can read Jared and his team at habseyesontheprize.com, HABSEYES on theprize.com. You could read Justin each and every day at www.rawcharge.com. I'm Jason Linkus. Thanks for joining us today. And as always, Jared, sorry to say this, but go Bolts.
Go Bolts.
Thank you for listening to Backchecking the Bolts. We are free and available on all platforms, including Apple, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Amazon, YouTube, and Deezer. If you enjoyed it, please be sure to subscribe and leave a review. You can follow Justin on Blue Sky at rawcharge.com. You can follow the show on X at Tampa_Bolts_pod and on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at Backchecking the Bolts. If you're interested in advertising on the show or partnering with us, you can find more information in the show notes or email Jason at backcheckingthebolts@yahoo.com.